Jesus taught a lot of parables while he was on the earth, but this one is the most difficult by far. It ends by saying, "And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." If you haven't figured out, that's hell. So the question is Jesus teaching that those who serve him could one day, someday, somehow end up going straight to hell because they didn't do enough? They didn't work hard enough? Is Jesus teaching that you can lose your salvation and go to hell? Let's take a closer look at this parable and see if that's what he's teaching or if there's something else going on. Okay, so the full parable is found in Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30, commonly known as the parable of the talents. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, "Oh, Brother Allen, I already know about that one." All right, but before we dig into the actual parable, it's important to understand the context, because you have to understand that Jesus didn't just go around teaching parables because he enjoyed telling stories. No, these parables were oftentimes, most times, in response to something. And in this case, it goes all the way back to Matthew chapter 24 to a very specific question that the disciples had for Jesus. Now look at verse 3. "Later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, 'Tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world?'" So they're like, "Jesus, you've been telling us all this time that you about to go to the cross and you're about to leave us and all this stuff. You're about to go prepare a place for us. You're going to take us to where you're going to be. So are there any signs or any signals or anything that we should look forward to so that we will know when you will return?" And so everything he teaches in chapters 24 and 25 point back to answering this one question. And the gist of the parables in chapter 25 specifically is that we don't know when he's going to return, but there are two things that we need to make sure that we are diligent in doing. We need to be waiting, actively waiting and expecting for him to return, hence the parable of the bridesmaids. And then we have the parable of the talents, which basically teaches not only we should be waiting for his return, but we need to be doing some work while he is gone. So with that context in mind, let's dig into this parable and let's see why so many people misunderstand it. They think it's just a simple story, a simple parable, but it's the most difficult one that Jesus ever taught. All right, verse 14. "For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property." So we have a man going on a long trip. Yes, we know this clearly represents Jesus, who is about to leave his disciples for an unknown period of time. As a matter of fact, he obviously still is on this trip, because as of the time of recording this video, unless Jesus comes back before this thing is released, he ain't returned yet, right? So now the bigger question becomes, who do the servants the master called together represent in this story? This is the key question that unlocks the entire meaning of the parable. Who are these servants? Who are they referring to? Do these refer to mankind in general? Are these servants Christians? Are they people who merely go to church? Are they people who claim to be Christians? Well, we'll get to that in a moment, all right? Because that is the key. Whoever they are, they were entrusted with the master's money. They were given a responsibility. And the obvious assumption was that the master would one day return and evaluate how well his servants managed his money. Next verse. Y'all said y'all want more verse by verse teaching. Here you go. All right. "To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away." So before the master left, he gave each servant a responsibility. Now, to us reading from a modern day perspective, we think, "Oh, this is nice, it's cute. All right, one brother got 5, one brother got 2, and one little brother or other brother got 1. And we tend to feel bad for the guy who just got 1, but we don't understand that a talent in these times was equivalent to, are you ready for this? 20 years worth of wages. So let's just make up a scenario. You make $100,000 a year. You just got, with that 1 talent, you just got $2 million to manage. That's how much the man with 1 talent got. The man with 5 talents just got $10 million to manage. So this was no small sum, right? I want you to imagine if you left your financial planner $10 million that you worked your life to amass, right? And you left him or her this amount of money to manage, and you were gone for years. And you came back and he didn't do anything with your money. How would you feel? Well, we'll get to that in a moment, all right? Now notice something else here. The master knew exactly what each servant could manage, and he gave them what he knew they were able to manage. And listen, my friend, God knows you and I so intricately well. He knows our intellect. He knows our natural talents. He knows our current responsibilities. He knows our capacity. He knows certain things that we have going on in our family and all that. He factors all of that in when deciding what responsibilities he gives to those who profess to be his followers. So this one talent wasn't too much for the third servant to manage. It was just right. And by doing this, Jesus was removing the possibility that any of the servants could come back and make the excuse, well, hey, you know what, master, you gave me too much. I got all this stuff going on. I got family, I got kids, I got soccer practice, I got this, I got a wife to love and be around and whatever, and to steward that relationship. God, you know, you've given me too much. So I wasn't able to manage what you give. God's like, no, I gave every servant just what I knew they could manage. The key here is not fruitfulness, but as we're gonna see, it's faithfulness or faithlessness. Let's keep going. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. Now, notice something here. The master didn't have to tell the first 2 servants to do anything with his money in the previous verse. He just gave them the money and left. So inherently, each servant knew what they were supposed to do. They had a sense. They knew what they were supposed to do. Keep that in mind as we go through this parable, as we get to the ending that's going to unlock the meaning. They knew what their master would have expected from them. Notice also that the servant, the first servant, he didn't wait to see what the other 2 servants were going to do. He didn't overthink it. He didn't move in fear. He wanted his master to be proud of him upon his return. He wanted to make sure he has something to give and something to show, something that he would be proud of. So he worked hard to maximize what was given to him and doubled what was given to him. Now, finally, notice this, that the brother went and traded with his talents to gain more, which implies he was willing to take a risk. He was willing to suffer loss. He showed initiative. Why? Because he knew his master would return. He knew his master was worth serving. And he would have rather said, hey, master, yeah, I lost some of your money. I may have lost a lot of your money, but let me show you all the things that I tried to do while you were gone. Let me show you all the receipts. Let me show you all the trades I made. Let me show you all the business deals that I tried to make, all the strings that I tried to pull in order to earn more of your money. Yes, I fell short, but these are all the things that I tried to do, rather than to stand before his master and be like, well, here's your money back. I didn't even try to do anything with it. All right, notice the man with 2 talents did the same thing. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. Now it gets interesting because we move to this third servant, and the word but introduces a strong contrast between what the first 2 servants did and what the third servant did. Notice verse 18. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, at first glance, from a 21st century perspective, this seems stupid, right? Like, forgive me for using that word, but why would you put money into the ground? But in the first century, this was actually seen as a wise way to protect money. I mean, this servant could have done a lot worse things with the money, let's be honest. He could have stolen it and ran away with it. He could have given it away, could have wasted it away, but he doesn't do any of that. Instead, he puts it in a safe place so that when his master returns, his money will be safe and secure. And if the master never returns, at least he's gonna know where the money is. He could take it for himself. Seems pretty reasonable to me. So this underscores a misconception that many people have about their relationship with God. As long as I don't do anything majorly wrong, I'll be okay. You would be surprised, my brother, or sister, how a lot of people view their relationship with God. As long as I'm not a murderer, as long as I'm not an adulterer, as long as I'm not literally on my knees bowing down and worshiping other gods, as long as I'm not doing all these evil things, God should be pleased with me. And that should be enough to get me into heaven. And as we're going to see in a moment, you don't have to do anything wrong to go straight to hell. Keep this in mind as we proceed. Verse 19. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. The day of reckoning has begun. But notice who he settled his accounts with. He settled them not with strangers, but with his servants only. Now, who are these servants? Who do they represent? Let's keep going. I'm going to get to that. Don't worry. Verse 20. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I've made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Notice how eager and excited the first servant was to stand before his master and show his master what he had done with his master's money. You can hear it in his voice. You could see it on his face. He was excited. Look, master, what I've been able to do with what you've entrusted to me. And as a result, he was rewarded for his faithfulness. So notice that because of his faithfulness over what was entrusted to him on earth, he received greater responsibilities throughout eternity. You see, a lot of Bible readers miss this, and there's a lot of Christians who miss this. We get so focused on what's going on here on earth that we don't realize how we maximize what God has given us to manage and steward on earth will determine the level of responsibility that we have throughout all eternity, because there will be different levels and rewards and responsibilities in the next life. I'm not saying there's going to be a ghetto heaven and a penthouse. No, I'm saying there's going to be different rewards and responsibilities in the next life. And how we live our life here will, my brother or sister, determine your eternal state. Let's keep moving on. And he who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. Master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. The same thing happens with the 2 talent servant, but notice he doesn't receive a reduced reward simply because he was given less. He receives the same reward the 5 talent servant received, further confirming that with God, faithfulness is more important than fruitfulness. The nursery worker is going to or could potentially receive the same reward as the missionary or as the pastor or as the seminary professor. The question is, were you faithful with what I gave you to do, no matter how big or small? That's the question. Now we come to the heart of the parable. The real reason why the 3rd servant didn't do what he knew he was supposed to do. Verse 24, he also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. Now, I want you to notice something very important here. This man who identified himself as a servant of the master really didn't know his master at all, because he totally misrepresented the master's character. He describes his master as a man who's hard, a man who's unfair, a man who takes advantage of people, reaping in places he never sowed, gathering crops in places he never scattered seed. The other 2 servants didn't describe him in this way. Keep this in mind when we discuss who these servants are. We'll get to that in a minute. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. Now notice how the master describes the servant. He's wicked, because he totally misrepresented the master's character. He's lazy, referring to his productivity or lack thereof. He did absolutely absolutely nothing. Then what happens here is rhetorical. The master, notice this, it's very important for you to understand this. The master is not agreeing with the servant's assessment of his character, but he's essentially saying, look, even if your assessment of me is true, your behavior makes even less sense, right? The master basically uses the servant's words against him. He's like, if you really believed in your mind that I was a harsh man, where I reap in places that I never sowed, or I gather in places I never scattered seeds, if you knew that I'm like unfair and mean, then wouldn't it make more sense to ensure that you had something to show me when I returned? Like, if you know he's like this, you should have done something with his money, right? And notice the master says, you could have bare minimum put my money in the bank and at least I could have gotten some interest. Look, that would have been so easy. Just take the money down to the bank, put it in there, get some interest, and then when I come back, at least I can get something. Like, how hard is that? That's nothing harder but that, right? Just take the money to the bank and it's good to go. He didn't even do that. Essentially, he benefited the master nothing. Watch this now. He wanted the benefits of being in the master's household, but none of the responsibilities. Let me repeat that again. He wanted all of the benefits of being in the master's household without any of the responsibilities. Here's the truth, and this is the truth that may likely sting for many watching this video. This servant was more concerned about doing his own thing than furthering the interests of his master. That's the bottom line. And that is the reality of so many people who profess to be Christians today. Serving God, furthering the kingdom is of no real, true importance to them, at least not in comparison to things like getting more degrees, making more money, building more businesses, growing your business, traveling the world, experiencing leisure and enjoying life and having fun, all of which are great things, by the way, but all of those things are more of a priority for most people who profess to be Christians rather than serving God. And notice that he couldn't use the excuse that he didn't know what to do because he was around other servants who did do the right thing. So before we move on with the story, before we reveal who these servants are, I want every one of us, every one of you watching this video to assess where your priorities might be right now. Is your life committed to serving God? Like, is that the highest aim for you? Is that the highest part? Are there other things in your life that are just way more of a priority for you in this season and have been for some time? Is your priority to take what God has given you in terms of your time, your talents, and your treasures and produce fruit that you'll be proud to present to him when you stand before him at one judgment or the other? Or does your life reflect more of this servant? You really don't think about Christ coming back. Your priorities line up more with advancing your own life's goals rather than the goals of the kingdom. If so, you may be in for a rude awakening. Well, let's keep going because here comes the most difficult part of the parable, verses 28 through 30. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So now finally, we have to answer the question, who do these servants represent? There are at least 4 primary interpretations. And as we go through these, I want you to think for yourself. Don't listen to Brother Allen. Think for yourself, which of these 4 make the most sense to you? And you let me know in the comment section below. All right, interpretation number 1. The first is that all 3 servants are believers or Christians, but the third servant loses his salvation and is therefore sent to hell. My perspective is this can't be the proper interpretation because this would then teach a works-based salvation system. You have to understand, if they are servants and in the house, that means they are Christians, right? You don't get saved, or rather, you get saved and you don't do enough work. God is angry with you. You go to hell because you didn't do enough work. That would be inconsistent with tons of New Testament scriptures that we don't have time to go through in this video that refutes salvation by works. So that is out. All right, interpretation number 2. For those who want to soften the meaning of this parable, they will suggest that all 3 servants are believers or Christians, just like interpretation number 1, but the 3rd servant, he just experiences regret over losing rewards, but he's still saved. So what you see happening at the end of the parable is that he didn't lose his salvation. He's just experiencing regret over losing rewards. And with all due respect, I have seen some commentaries from people I respect deeply promoting this view, but I'm sorry guys, I struggle with that interpretation because elsewhere in the New Testament, the phrase outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth, generally refers to hell. Believers are never described as being cast into outer darkness. Not only that, believers are never described by God as being wicked and worthless. No, we are righteous and precious. So to me, this interpretation is out. All right, interpretation number 3. These 3 servants represent humanity broadly. The faithful are the believers and the unfaithful are the non-believers. But this also has its issues because the servants are explicitly described as being inside the house. If Jesus represents the master who goes away, non-believers are never described as servants of Jesus. Furthermore, they were all entrusted with responsibility. Non-believers are not. And that leaves one final interpretation. It is my personal belief through hours of study that the servants represent people, and I've left hints in this video, who claim they believe in Jesus. They claim they are servants of Jesus. They profess to be Christians. They claim the name of Christianity. They claim they belong to Jesus. They self-identify as Christians or servants. They go to church. Why? Because the servant knew what the master expected of him. When you grow up in church, when you grow up in a Christian household, when you live here in the United States, you know who Jesus is. You know what he's expecting for you to do. You've heard the sermons before. You've probably read the scriptures before. You may have been grown up in Sunday school. You know what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Unbelievers don't. The servant identified himself as belonging to the master. That doesn't mean that he did. It just means it's how he self-identified. Unbelievers don't identify themselves with Jesus. The issue that I believe is being addressed here is fruitlessness and relationship. And my brothers and sisters, this concept of fruitlessness is consistently throughout the entire New Testament. In Matthew 7, Jesus says a tree is known by the fruit that it bears. And in verse 19, it says every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown where? Into the fire. How that sounds very similar to Matthew 25. In John 15, we see a similar theme. It says in verse 5, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And if anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. So branches that don't bear fruit are thrown into the fire and burned. Sounds a lot like Matthew 25. In Matthew 21, Jesus curses a tree that didn't bear any fruit. In James chapter 2, verse 26, it says, just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. I wish the Bible didn't speak so clearly about the danger of fruitlessness, but it does. And it teaches a sad reality similar to the one Jesus taught in Matthew 7, and that is that on Judgment Day, there will sadly be many who are shocked. This parable is not teaching works-based salvation. It is not. Works-based salvation, to be clear, teaches that you have to work in order to either be saved or maintain your salvation. That's not what it's teaching. What I believe this is teaching is that people who are truly converted, people who are really servants in the household of the master, will naturally want to demonstrate fruit consistent with what they say they believe. The purpose of this video and this parable isn't somehow to create fear. It's designed to get you to examine your priorities, examine your beliefs, examine your relationship with Jesus, and whether or not you are maximizing what God has given you for his glory. And just in case you think this warning is not needed, allow me to remind you of these statistics. According to George Barna, roughly 69% of Americans identify as Christians or servants. Watch this. Only 9% hold to what's called a biblical worldview, which means the other 60% hold to some view that contradicts a major core tenet and belief of the Christian faith. Maybe marriage between one man and a woman, the right to life, Jesus and Christianity being the only way to get to God, the reality of hell, the resurrection of Jesus, whatever, a whole bunch of them. Here's another one. According to Barna, 69% of Americans identify as Christians, but only 24% would classify as a practicing Christian, which Barna describes as a Christian who identifies as a Christian, number one. Number two, attends church regularly. And number three, agrees that faith is very important in their life. Only 24% out of the 69% say that they're Christian. I could go on, but you get the sad reality. Not everyone who claims to be a Christian truly is. So, how do you assess where you are? I want to encourage you to take a look at your last year, just the last year, and ask yourself honestly, what fruit have I bore that would demonstrate my allegiance to Christ? Just take some time, write it down, pray about it, ask God to bring it to your remembrance. And I'm not talking about things like being a good person and all that. Non-believers are trying to be good people too. So no. Where have you actively served the Lord using your gifts, your talent, your time, your talent, your treasures? And here it is. In what ways would this distinguish you from an unbeliever? Because see, that takes away all of the, well, I'm trying to be a nice person, trying to be a good person garb. No, unbelievers do that. All right. Are you actively defending your faith? Are you having conversation with non-believers, sharing the gospel with them? Do you serve in church? Do you spend regular time with God? Are you walking in your purpose? Are you actively making disciples and sharing with other Christians to try to equip them to grow in their faith? Are you pouring what you know, your experiences and things that you've done in your life into other believers? Or are you just comfortably coasting with very little, if any, tangible spiritual fruit? Finally, I want you to ask yourself, what has God given me in terms of my time, talents, and treasures that I need to stop burying and give back to him? And what changes might I need to make in my life to ensure I am prioritizing God in my life? As I conclude, listen, any first century Pharisee would have been shocked to know that they were going to hell because they were blinded in thinking otherwise. And I don't want that for you. And more than likely, you watching this video, you've made it all the way to the end of this video. I don't think you want that for yourself. So take some time to assess where your faith is right now and whether you're maximizing what God has given you, not for your own glory, but for his, so that you can hopefully escape the reality of the third servant who was quite surprised when he stood before his master and his master called him a wicked and lazy servant, sent him into the outer darkness. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. Hey, my friend, thank you so much for watching this video. So I want to take just a quick moment to say that if you are at a place now where you're planning your monthly giving, maybe for your church or other organizations, would you prayerfully consider supporting our ministry? If we've been a blessing to you and you enjoy these videos, we have a variety of needs ranging from a ton of subscriptions that we have to invest in order to keep this thing going. We've got team members that we need to pay salaries for to make sure that they can provide for their families, studio rental fees, equipment, and all sorts of other expenses that are required to enable this ministry to continue to create the high quality free content that you see on this YouTube channel and beyond that impacts the world. So a donation of any amount would be much appreciated. Although if you are able to partner with us on a monthly basis, that would be preferred. There is a link below this video where you can give. And yes, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So whatever you give is certainly tax deductible. If you are unable to support us at this time, we understand that. We just ask that you continue to support us through prayer. So thank you in advance for whatever support you're able to give us. Blessings to you.